Hey everybody, happy Saturday. I am Nick Slavik. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It is a weekly live Facebook show where I use my almost 3 decades of experience as a craftsperson and a business owner in this beautiful craft that we love to answer any questions. And so I am back on home soil. Last week, you guys saw me from a tropical island in the Gulf of Mexico on the end of an airstrip, enjoying some family time. I am back. And I was tasked by both Purdy and Minwax to come up with some fall maintenance, fall fix-up tips for everybody. And I am going to slant that a little bit towards the pro contractor. It'll intersect with a lot of things that homeowners can do, but it's going to be geared towards the pro contractor as well. We're going to talk about my trinity of brushes, my chosen 3 brushes. We're going to talk about some quick deck maintenance. We can talk about the entire deck process, but especially come to fall, maybe you haven't got to a whole deck restoration. Maybe you're not going to. Kids are going back to school. We resume normal life. And I can show you some things that'll get your deck through or your outdoor structure until next spring. We're going to talk about touching up some exterior paint. And then right down here, I have a beautiful handmade white oak table that we're going to apply sailboat varnish to. So it's a beautiful day, nice calm morning, and I feel like varnishing something. So we got a lot of other things to cover too. Number one, thank you guys for watching this. Any questions you guys have about any of this, anything unrelated, we can talk business, we can talk financials, we can talk coding science, employees, finding employees, things like that. Type it all down below. We will get to this stuff, but first, I want to acknowledge the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association. So again, you've heard me say it before, there's a hockey stick curve in my business. I limped along for a lot of years, big hockey stick curve at the end. The base of that hockey stick curve is when I got involved with the PCA. I will say this ad nauseum. If you pay your membership dues and do nothing else, you've wasted your money. If you pay your membership dues to the Painting Contractors Association and start interacting with all the people there, your life will be changed. It changed my life. It is not an understatement to say that most of the good things that have happened to me professionally in this craft, my maturity as a craftsperson, a business owner, a leader, happened because I was influenced by the people who are doing things much better than me in the PCA. So I will urge you, not only does the PCA have a ton of free resources like industry standards, the thing that I always talk about is, a client, somebody on a painter on the Facebook painter internets will say, hey, a client says this is a flaw. I don't think it is. What's the standard? The PCA actually has that standard. It'll tell you how far away to stand and in what lighting condition you can determine what a flaw or something that is non-standard in a painting job is. So that's there. All these things already exist. That's actually a free resource for you. If you haven't looked into Overdrive as well, Overdrive is kind of the Netflix of painting content. It's a beautifully organized, curated set of content from all the people you know and love: Zach Kenny, Torlando Hakes, Noah Cantor, all the rest on there. And that's organized in a beautiful way by subject, by person, everything else. I would urge you to go find that stuff. Kindest thing you guys can do for this show is to follow the Ask a Painter live page and share it, folks. Let's get more like-minded people from around the country in here and doing this stuff. Also, I have taken a little bit of family time. We had a very busy August, not that many master's classes, but we are going hot and heavy again. We have about 3 back-to-back. We're going to California. We're going to Austin, Texas. We're going to Chicagoland, give or take. If you guys are interested in showing up to one of those, or if you just want to host one of your own, all you got to do is raise your hand, somehow let me know, somehow let the PCA know. We can get that going for you. If you want to attend those, there's a link in this show here, and take a look. I can guarantee you that a day spent with me is going to be a great knowledge share. I share as much as I ask from people. It's a great exchange between peers, and it's basically what I try to structure those things as is not just me vomiting and lecturing onto people, but it's really an interaction where I'm looking to my peers in the industry to give me some perspective. I give you pure, clean data from my business, and we combine those things and we get after it in a beautiful day of learning. Never has one person walked away from those saying, that wasn't worth it. Universally, it's tough to take a day off, right? But I guarantee you, you will get way more value in it. So, all right, folks, Purdy and Minwax tasked me. I like when people give me the challenges. There's a lot of times when a brand will come to you and say, hold this up and do this. I like the relationship I have with Purdy and Minwax because they're like, here's the thing. We're going to task you with this. Just show us what you do and then show everybody else. And luckily enough, we do a ton of Purdy in my business. We are a Purdy-based business, so this is a very, very easy thing to do. Number one, deck maintenance. When we talk about fall, we have to start thinking about a couple things. In the upper Midwest, it is August. It is beautiful. It is go time. This is the season to reap what you have sown. The weather is nice, the days are long, and we're out there doing tons of exterior work. But as people know, you start getting into September and definitely October, the dew starts hitting early morning, the dew points get real weird, and you get that heavy dew. And if you don't have enough wind, I mean, today we have a beautiful breeze here, but if you don't have wind, there's days in Minnesota where a heavy dew can stay till 12 or 1 p.m. until the sun hits it. You are not going to be doing a lot of deck refinishing on days like that. Or if you do, it's not going to be very good deck refinishing. So what we do as a company is, number one, when you get into these fall projects, we think that we have August, September, October left. Be careful, folks. In Minnesota, it snows in October. So don't think that, well, we'll just cross our fingers for a nice, good early, warm fall, and we'll get that deck done. I would say August is prime time. You will not get a better time in the upper Midwest. In some of the other areas of the country, it might be a little hot. You might be able to skew that a little bit. But I would say, please, if you're going to do something to the outside of your house, do it ASAP. Now, September is still pretty good. We still get a lot of production done in there, but really, we almost have a moratorium on a lot of exterior projects, especially decks, come October, because we can either get the most beautiful, dry, breezy, arid October, or it can be a disaster. Snow, rain, dew, crazy winds, storms, everything else. So don't take it for granted, folks. That's the biggest fall tip I can tell you is that, listen, we've all had a great summer. We've had weekends at the lakes. We've had summers on the patio. If you got to get something done, for the love of God, just do it right now. Now, of the things that people start looking to in the fall is, number one is those decks, trellises, play sets, pergolas, patios, any kind of wood structure that you didn't get to. The basic idea of this is, there are insane methods of getting this stuff ready out there for you. So people have all sorts of elaborate Rube Goldberg-esque sort of things. The biggest thing you can do is get the dirt off, get any failed coatings off, and recoat it with something else. I think some people try to chase perfection when it comes to exterior wood finishing, when they really should chase really, 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 really good. This is not going to be a piece of cabinetry inside your house. The things that you apply to exterior decks and things should be beautiful and uniform and lustrous, but they are a wear coating. They are a sacrificial coating to these things. So when we think about fall maintenance, one of the things I think about, like, okay, let's say, kids are going back to school soon. We have to resume normal life. We're not going to have a time for the full deck restoration. What do we do? Here's what I tell all my people. Typically, this is what we get with decks. We just get something that's, just been great. This thing, I found one of the most perfect decks, and I salvaged a bunch of boards for it from a contractor who's taken it. This is a deck that's probably 10, 12 years old. It's been stained once. Nothing ever has been done with it again. So you can see remnants of old stain. It's getting gray. It's getting furry. It's starting to get a little bit checked in places like that. The best thing you can do is wash this stuff and seal it. Now, you can use all sorts of brightening chemicals, things like that. There's all sorts of stock chemicals that you can get from your local Sherwin-Williams to help you brighten all that stuff. But the biggest part is you got to agitate some of the dirt and some of the old fibers off. And a lot of people go towards a pressure washer, which is fine, but that's not our theory in our business. We use scrub brushes. You can get any sort of Purdy prep tools, things like that. This one happens to be a wire brush, but agitating with a scrub brush and even just dish soap and a nice scrub brush will get a lot of that stuff off. Allow it to dry. You want 15% moisture or less, and then you can recoat. Now, let's say this is typically what this will look like after our process. You can see the nice, beautiful sort of cleaned and sanded wood down here, and then we apply just a nice natural sort of stain like this. Now, let's say that you did this to your deck 1 to 3 years ago and it's time to recoat, and this was supposed to be the year that you're supposed to get to it, and you cannot get to it for whatever reason, good or bad. Typically what I tell my clients is like, listen, fret not, all right? Let's say you can't get to it all. Don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can do the most critical parts of your deck and limp it along for another couple years. Now, most critical parts of the deck are tops of the handrails and the floor, and the steps too if you have steps, tops of the steps. Typically, what I found is that when we stain a deck, people say, well, how long is it going to last? Follow the data. All the technical data sheets say you probably have to recoat it for a natural colored deck like this every 1 to 2 years, erring more towards the 1 year side like that. So people get a little disheartened when they hear that, like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to stain it every year. I'll say, listen, that's what the technical data sheets say. I do it to my own decks, but you don't necessarily have to. This is the real world. We're busy, right? So what you can do is do the full deck 1 year, and then probably within the next 2 to 3 years, do the spindles again. But if you have to do something every year, the tops of the handrail and the floor and the tops of the steps, the actual stair treads, anything that's horizontal, especially in the upper Midwest, when the sun just beats down on it, the UV rays degrade those coatings very quickly. We have lots of rain on them. And then most people in the upper Midwest, when you get a whole bunch of snow, the snow kind of tends to stay there all winter. So it's got this nice ice and snow coating on top. Spindles will usually go 3 years without maintenance. Tops of handrails, floor, and steps, just get out there and coat them every year. The floor looks like the biggest part of the staining job. It is not. For anybody who's stained a big deck 2 stories in the air, the spindles are where all the effort's at. So even if nothing else, even if you just get out there and quick scrub brush, garden hose, dish soap, clean that stuff off, let it dry, recoat it, you're still light years ahead of preserving your wood. So that's sort of a maintenance thing. Now, yes, what we want to do is the full Monty, the full brightening, sanding, restoration, but we have to be realistic as well. If you can't do that, it's so important to just coat and seal that wood so that it doesn't check, so that the nail holes don't start rotting or the screw holes don't start rotting. Just keeping that thing, that structure in good shape. Now, I brought another couple samples of these deck boards out here because the maintenance could be a little bit different depending on what kind of deck you have like this. If you have a natural color deck like this, you do have to be a little bit critical about if your tops of your handrails and your floors are like this. If you get to them before they turn gray, you put another coat on, you're going to deepen and richen that color. And it may be a little different than the spindles. Every deck is going to be different. Wood is a very natural element. We've all heard it before. But when you apply stuff like this, you're going to deepen the color. So you have to be careful every once in a while that you're not deepening it too much, that you're not creating a color problem. Now, in a solid color stain sort of thing, like this is 2 coats of a solid color acrylic. You can see bare wood, 1 coat, we work it in heavy. 2nd coat, same thing, filling in nail holes and screw holes and things like that. And this is a little bit easier to maintain because it's a solid color. If you add another coat, it's not really gonna, deepen the color or anything else like that. You just have to be careful that you don't over apply. So typically what I would do is maybe even go after the areas that are peeling or areas that are showing wear already. But one of the things you can do bad to a deck actually is over apply a bunch of stuff, because if you think about it, this thing here, it's bare on the backside. And this is not the greatest situation for a coating to stay, because this side is open to the elements and it has moisture and humidity migrating through it. And this side is completely sealed. So if you just use like a rubbery latex or butyl paint on top, you'll actually create a shell and you'll get those horrible peeling things. That's why we use a solid color acrylic stain, because it'll actually go into the wood and bite. It's a more penetrating formula than a primer and a paint. So you just have to be careful that you don't over apply. With any solid coating on a deck, if you can coat all the surfaces, great. But most people don't coat all the surfaces on a deck. So just be careful that you don't get out there and every year you're throwing 2 coats on the floor and pretty soon you got this big rubbery shell and then it delaminates and things like that. So just be leery of that. So we're going to talk about my trinity of brushes, my chosen 3 brushes in regards to touching up paint as well. So even on my house, the Slavik house, which is there, we're on the Slavik farm today, we have brand new LP siding. The house is only about 1.5 years old, but I did notice that with the movement of the siding, with the heat and humidity, we have board and batten siding. So we have big sheets of nice LP siding, and we have ribs, battens that go up and down in a traditional barn kind of format. And when those things move, sometimes those nails that were flush with the LP move up or down like that, and they can expose some bare substrate like that. And if you leave that go, water will get in there and it'll puff up and fail. So typically what we'll do then is grab the paint that the house was done with, and we'll just touch those little areas up. Again, you could wait 7 years for that to happen, but that's not how houses weather. When people say, how long will an exterior paint job last? I'll say, you know what? Something on this house will fail in a year. Some stuff will still be good in 20 years. The north side. Look for a windowsill on the south side. There's probably going to be something failing there within a year. A house doesn't all age at the same time perfectly. So typically with my trinity of brushes, and we'll get into this, Obviously, if you're using an oil-based stain on this, you want to use a natural bristle brush from Purdy. But typically, most of the stuff that we do is water-based or hybrid-based. So we're using a bunch of brushes with nylon or the bristles that are the like. My Trinity, my go-to. This is probably our most used in the company. The Pro Extra 2.5-inch straight cut Alaska. So I've been using these for as long as I can remember with the company. Um, my impression years and years and years ago was they clean insanely easy. These are industrial strength, tough bristles. They go forever. They're firm, so you always have to be careful with brushes because people like extremes. Oh, the beautiful soft or the super firm. You got to have both a little bit, especially if you want a brush that's a utility player like this. Um, Straight cut, longer handle. This is our go-to for all interior painting, walls, trim, not trim, walls, ceilings, cutting, things like that, and trim outside. We love the living daylights out of these things. They are super useful. They're beautiful. They're long lasting. One of the most just like perfectly made tools that we use. We've been using the same thing with our standard operating procedures for years. For exterior use, when we have to use a wall brush like that, we go the Swan. This is the 3-inch straight cut. I like a nice beaver tail. You know, from 29 years of doing this stuff, when you're using, we restore a lot of houses by hand. And when you're doing hand brushing for long periods of time, I like to have a little more substantial handle. The one on the Alaska isn't bad, but we're not going all day long brushing like crazy. I like the little bit extra handle on the Alaska because when you're cutting inside a house, that can get you an extra 3 or 4 inches cut this way, 3 or 4 inches cut that way. It keeps you moving a little faster, and it's almost like a pencil grip where you can be a little more exact. When I'm outside with the Swan, and the Swan is the thicker one too. I always like if you're gonna if you're gonna go outside and be brushing, you want to really get some stuff done. So the handle fits my hand a little bit better. You can have a little more control. And yeah, it's just a wonderful tool, big production tool. And again, when you're brushing all day, especially historic homes, barns, if you use a bristle that's too soft, you'll actually see it at the end of the job wear down a little bit. These things, you can do house after house after house without any noticeable wear on it like that. Again, they clean up super well. So insanely good combination of stiffness and fineness. So stiffness, if you've ever used a very limp, um, finely bristled, delicate brush on an outside of a house, it skips over a lot of the pores. You want a super stiff bristle. But the problem is if you go all the way to an insanely stiff bristled brush, sometimes it'll likely or likewise still skip over those pores. So super stiff ends and trunks to all these bristles and super finely flagged ends like that, and that'll work in all those pores really nicely. So the final in the Trinity is my beloved Nylox Sprig. This baby is such a beautiful little tool. This is our fine finishing brush. So anything from water-based hybrids and oils, we use this same thing. So it is a nylon bristled brush, but the bristles have again just that perfect combination of it's just stiff enough to push some enamel around, especially heavy-bodied enamels, but it is one of the most finely bristled brushes that you can get, and it's just beautiful to work with these things. This one's made by Maggie. New sticker on that one. But yeah, these things, if for anybody who's ever done the interior fine finishing work like this with any of those kind of water, oil, or hybrid enamels, you guys know that this thing is a very, very special tool. And taken care of, boy, they go for a long time. And yeah, they're just they seriously change the level of your finishing. It's a great thing. So that's my kind of trinity of brushes here. Obviously, when we're messing around with the outside of a house, Purdy paint pail here. Any of the latex stuff that we do outside, we're using, the Purdy Pro Extras. On my particular house, it's only a year and a half old, so I saw a couple nail holes like that. I'm filling those things. But if you have a historic home or a home that's got painted windows, painted siding, things like that, you want to be looking for south side. South side in the upper Midwest is the big one. That's the one that's kind of canary in the coal mine. You also want to look for windowsills and anywhere on dormers where rain comes, splashes against shingles and ricochets back and splashes back on the house. That's usually where you're going to find your first wear on your house. And you may look at a portion and say, well, that it's getting dingy. We should probably paint the house. You don't necessarily have to. sometimes if you have a substrate that's being opened up to the elements, it's better to just get up there, put a little maintenance coat on, touch up. Even if it's not perfect, you have saved that substrate so you don't have to do carpentry or something the next year. So, okay, folks, I'm going to get rid of these and we're going to get to our table. Move these guys over. All right. There, I might have to adjust this camera real quick here. There is nothing that takes more maintenance than sort of like any fine finishing wood project that's an outdoor project. You know, when you think about like outdoor wood furniture is one of the worst ones. This stuff, a lot of the times it has flat surfaces like this. It's got a clear finish because we want that beautiful clear finish. It's exposed to the elements like crazy. Here, I'm going to run through some comments right here, make sure we're all so good here. All right, give me 1 second. All right, I'll come back and get all your guys' questions here in a second. I'm going to get through this table here first. Just want to make sure the audio is okay. So, yeah, there's nothing that takes more maintenance than something like this. Now, this particular table is a solid white oak table. I made this out of white oak trim that I restored my historic home in New Prague with, probably about 10 or 12 years ago. The legs and the base down here are made out of reclaimed red and white oak. This stuff actually came out of a house built in the 1800s in New Prague, and it was the framing. That house was framed with solid 2-inch by 4-inch oak, and they put a stack on the curb. I salvaged it all. There's still a whole bunch of cut nails, beautiful things in there. The reason I built my outdoor table out of oak is because if I did nothing to it, oak is one of the most rot resistant woods that you can possibly get, especially white oak. White oak historically, not only is it my favorite wood, especially the quarter sawn stuff, they use it for fence posts. They use it for trailer decking because it's like iron. It is one of the hardest woods you can get. The War Room Conference table is made out of solid white oak, and I found a sneaky way to use it. It is actually trailer decking for lowboy trailers. It came already laminated like that, and it is legitimately the hardest wood that you can get domestically like that. So left alone without finishing, it turns into a beautiful silvery gray, and it lasts forever. Even though it is great, it's still outside because this is all flat sawn stuff. You can see the cathedral pattern. It does still have a few checks in it, and that's why I want to preserve this table. Now, I've coated it probably 6 or 7 times over the years. That's an average of about every 2 years. I really should do this every year. For the last about 3 years, it's sort of been in storage. You know, when we were moving from our historic home in town to the Slavik house out here, it's kind of been in storage in a shed and this and that. I pulled this sucker out and I actually just sanded all the finish off of the top this morning. It took about 11 minutes, give or take. Remember, these things are wear coatings. This is not a Victorian antique where when you put a finish on, it's going to last 100 years. What you're doing to outdoor pieces like this, entry doors, wood furniture, you're actually putting on sunblock or a wear layer for these things. So people think, wow, you just sanded all the finish off. What was all that for? It's like, no, the reason this wood is in this good a condition is because it had that wear layer. Now, interestingly enough, when I was a younger craftsperson, I used to think water was the killer of all coatings. I thought, God, if you could just keep water away from coatings, it's going to be perfect. True. But I have come to realize that sun and UV is the true killer of coatings, especially clear coatings. Entry doors that never get a drop of rain on them, but have a west sun come in and beat on them, will be destroyed in a year with clear finish. So what do we use for this then? We got this beautiful table, nice and prepped. What are we going to use? So we have, this is one of my favorite coatings ever. I want to say I've been using this for at least 10 or 15 years, but it might be even longer than that as far as I can remember. I do not know how long Minwax has been making this, but I have been using it. I can't remember a time when we used other stuff. So this is Minwax Helmsman Spar Varnish. What is Spar Varnish? So this is actually something that I can be a little bit pretentious and get on my high horse when we start talking about Helmsman and Spar Varnish and Marine Varnish and things like that because, especially in the restoration world, there's a huge misnomer about what this stuff is. There's a lot of old house restorers who are like, you know what, I'm going to redo all the wood floors in my house, and you know what, I'm going to use that marine varnish because that's the toughest stuff on the planet. This is not the toughest stuff on the planet. Depends how you define tough. Spar varnish. A spar is an actual piece of a sailboat. It's a wooden piece of a sailboat. A spar and the rigging and the mast and everything on a sailboat is meant to flex. This is a flexible varnish. It moves with wood outside. This would actually be a terrible choice for a wood floor because it's the slightest bit softer than like a polyurethane or a hardwood floor finish like that. But it is perfect. It's the Ferrari of exterior wood finishes because it moves with the wood. Things I like about this: it's thick. It moves with the wood. It's got, so one of the things that's hard to quantify about a lot of clear finishes is the sophistication, something that I call the sophistication, which is there's a lot of finishes when you put them on, they look a little plasticky and saran wrappy, or they just look unsophisticated. Like they can be effective finishes and they can last a long time, but if they don't look sophisticated, you're not getting that bang for the buck out of it. The reason I started using this stuff because I couldn't believe how beautiful and lustrous this satin is. There's different kinds of satin. We all know that. Some bump towards semi-gloss. Some start getting into matte and flat. This is right down the middle. It's a beautiful low satin, and it's just got one of the most beautiful, sophisticated looking finishes. Typical maintenance for something like this, you'll hear all sorts of crazy stuff from people where, hey, you got to do 7 to 10 coats of marine varnish the first year and then 2 to 3 every year after. I mean, come on, let's get real, folks. That'd be awesome if we all had enough time for that. But we got employees, we got businesses, we got families, we got hobbies even. So what I normally do is a couple coats and then just hit it every year or two. And you know what? If after 3 years you just don't get to it, sand the top off and redo it again. It's all right, folks. The most important part is that you just use a good product so you're not wasting all your effort. So on this beautiful morning here, the dappled sunlight, I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to pour a little off, and we're going to use our Nylox. We're just going to put a beautiful coat on the top of this table here. So actually, you know what, I tell you what, before we do that, why don't we see if we got any questions here so I don't leave any of you guys hanging. Man, thank you everybody for watching. It's such a beautiful day here. Alex St. Germain, Fresh Alex, how's it going? Oh, Fernando Granado. Bom dia, my friend. So, haven't made the announcement yet, but we are planning a Brazil trip. So, Fernando, I hope to see you soon, my friend, probably in the next couple months here. My friend Ronnie is coming to America, and he's going to be spending some time here. And then, if all works well, if we can get it all planned out and the world doesn't fall apart between now and then, I'm headed to Brazil with him. So, that will be lots of fun. Oh, Peter, how's it going from Australia? Man, we got a diverse show today. Oh, and then there's Joran from the Netherlands. My God, people, you guys are all over the place here. So, Joran, I tell you what, when are you coming to the Dutch lands? You write me an email. Let's make this happen. I think we can make that happen. I haven't done the Europe thing yet, but let's do it, man. Brandon, good morning, my friend. My shop manager is watching as well. Oh, Holly, how's it going? Oh, here we go. Oh, I love this one. Good morning. What is the best way to clean Ipe ironwood before treating? So you hear all sorts of old wives' tales and things like that too about Ipe, Brazilian cherry, ironwood, zebra wood. It's called 1,000 different things. It's basically a super hard, oily, exotic wood. Holly, I use some sort of brightener with oxalic acid and dish soap. I do quick and dirty. You can get the pre-made ones. You can make it yourself. You can find wood brightener. But either way, I like to use the wood brightener. I like to put a bunch of dish soap, really good sticky dish soap in there to make that brightener stick. Because if you just mix brightener with water, it's kind of loose and runny, and it'll either soak in or kind of just evaporate. If you put a bunch of dish soap in there, it clings. Like when you spray it on spindles, it really clings to it. And then, yes, power wash, but I only use power washers to really rinse the wood. What you really want to do is agitate with a very soft bristle brush, kind of like a car wash brush on a stick, on a handle. Get in there and agitate the heck out of that stuff. And then I give it a light sand. I always like 180, 150 or 180. If it's a nice hardwood, it's not too rough. 180 is pretty good. You hear a lot of people say to wipe it down with acetone or things like that. Honestly, I've not really run into a bunch of oily versions of that. Maybe we get different stuff in the upper Midwest. Maybe the upper Midwest helps that oil evaporate quicker. But maybe if it's new, give that a try. But I hear it's very oily wood, and I hear that you have to wipe it down with acetone. Every deck that we've done like that, we've had great results with just our standard deck process. But you can always do a test section as well. So, all right, everybody. Man, lots of people watching this morning. Aroldo Demont. Oh, Aroldo, hi, how are you? You use insulation for wood. I'd have to get a little more context on your question there. Gustavo, Chinex is our go-to for all our latex paints. Oh man, yeah, I got one of those. Absolutely. Yep. Chinex is an example of a beautifully sturdy brush like that. Like when we do stucco, super rough old wood, these suckers are the way to go. They are about the stiffest ones we use. Insanely, insanely good bristles, brushes for that sort of thing. So love those things. Gustavo, Nylox for enamels. You got it, man. There's not a better combo than that out there. I just love that stuff. Oh, Devin, how's it going, man? Met Devin over in California, Canary of the coal mine. I'm gonna have to use that. I wish I came up with that. That is a long time old saying. So, oh, Phil Klein, we will see you soon, man. Missing you guys. Gustavo loves the Love the Helmsman oil varnish. Recently used it, and it had a great finish. Yeah, it is beautiful. Um, David, can you spray that varnish? Yes, absolutely. On almost all of our entry door refinishing projects, this stuff is sprayed on there. Rue, how's it going? I got some home projects we'll be working on with some clear on the front door. Oh, absolutely. And Rue, always good to talk to you, man. Aaron Smith, didn't know the meaning of spar. Nice little tidbit. Yeah, so it's good to be curious about the craft because we use a lot of these words like helmsman. That's boat terminology. Spar is boat terminology. All those sort of things. It's good to know where it came from because it informs all those sort of things. So Peter Ellis, good morning, man. How's it going? Nick Wade, Spar is great. It's what we use for all of our exterior wood doors here in South Florida. Absolutely. So yeah, coming from Florida recently, last week, yeah, it's great to see those projects, and I always love Florida, especially the island that I was on, because maintenance, fall. You don't think of fall as the pumpkin spicy leaves falling down in Florida, but my God, the maintenance there is even so much more important than Minnesota. Between the salt and the humidity and the winds and the storms and everything else, you guys have a whole different maintenance regimen down there. And man, it is it is something else. Those it's like the weather is actively trying to destroy what you guys do even more aggressively than it does here. So, Brady, how's it going, man? Good to see you. All right, folks, let's varnish a table here. Enough waiting, and then we're all going to get on with our days. So, all right, we have sacrificial cup because we want to keep everything clean. So, again, along the line of prep tools and things like that. This is something that we get for the entire company. This is what we call our prep pouches. And we have a little tape hook on here. Go-tos in here. I mean, basically, we have our Purdy folding tool. This is my beloved one that's seen a lot of houses like that. And then when we have to retire a Purdy, I mean, my God, I think this brush I've had in my prep pouch for at least over a decade here. But this is my beloved Purdy cleaning brush like this. You can see the end of it is worn so smooth here. It's like a piece of driftwood with all my hand oil infused here. But um, thousands of houses have been prepped. Baseboards, exterior windowsills, things like this. It's a testament to how long these things last like that. So when you do have to retire a Purdy, you can get about another 20 years out of it in another way like that. But this is the prep pouch here. This is what we use. So when you talk about exterior prep and all that other stuff, that's what we do. So all right, pop this guy open here, and I will pour this down here. Always pour from the back of the can, and you don't need much. We're going to cap it right away. We use a sacrificial cup only because we don't want to get a whole bunch of dust and things back in what we call the mother, the main quart right down there that we're using like that. And typically what I'll do is pour in just enough, and you never want to waste coatings, but if you have another quarter inch of this stuff left in this cup, You can just let it dry out or throw it away or put a coagulant in it and then safely dispose of it. But you don't necessarily want to throw this back in the mother. It'll just contaminate it like that. So um, whenever we do um, for a project like this, you could use any number of Purdy natural bristle brushes, the white china, the black china, things like that. Those are great. Those are awesome for decks, for furniture like this. But to me, this is kind of a hybrid project. This is almost like a fine finishing project, but it just happens to be outside. So you wouldn't be wrong using any of the naturals. My go-to, if I got to do a fine finishing project, though, I'm going with the Nylox for sure. So strategy here is I'm going to coat the edges first. And brushing away from the edges. So one of the nice things about Spar Varnish is that it's got a long open time. So for those of you who have been around the industry long enough, you know that there are things called long oils and there are things called short oils. Short oils are sort of like maybe quick dry varnishes, quick dry oil primers, something that'll dry to the touch in an hour or two. Um, for the rest of you old timers like me, who's been around for a lot of decades, we know what long oils are. Long oils are oil primers or oil varnishes that take a very long time to dry, sometimes overnight or a day. And one of the benefits of them is they penetrate a little more because they stay open, and they also level out a little better too. So Spar Varnish, one of the interesting things about the Minwax Helmsman is that it's not a true long oil because it doesn't stay wet that long, but it stays wet much longer than a standard, like the Minwax polyurethane and things like that. It gives you a lot of nice open time when you're working outside, especially if you're in the sun or if it's a little hot, things like that. But one of the cool things is it's like if, at least for my pace, by the time I finish a project like this or an entry door, it's already starting to tack up on one end, and it doesn't stay open so long that you get all sorts of crazy dust and things like that in there. So one of the cool things about the Helmsman as well is that it sands so beautifully. You can powder this stuff up just awesome whenever it's dry. We usually just wait overnight. But yeah, you can just see this stuff, especially with these outdoor pieces of furniture like this. Um, this beautiful stuff is penetrating. You can just see it soak right into this oak. And what I'm trying to do is kind of level it off as I go. Because the oak is so porous, the open time is going to be a little bit less. So normally what I would do if I was on the second or third coat, if we do a third coat on something like this, I would apply this stuff as quick as I can to the entire table and then come back and do what I'm doing now, which are finishing strokes like this. But this first board that I did is already starting to tack up because it's penetrating into the wood, not leaving much on top to stay open. So that's why what I'm doing, I'm almost doing leveling strokes as I'm going. I'm not leaving any sort of flaws or pools of it on there because I'm not going to get that much time to go back and do it. So another thing you want to do too is I see a lot of people kind of do stuff like this, and you get a bunch of holidays and things where you're not working it into the pores. What you want to do is apply to saturation. So you want to get it on there as thickly as you can, as thick as you can. Work it in there back and forth. And that's where the benefit of stiff but beautifully fine bristles come in handy. It'll work it into those pores, especially open grain white oak. What I'm not doing is dragging the brush against here because that edge of the table will grab that and it'll be a big run. So just finish this guy off here. And then you just want to give those edges another quick touch. Now, you be careful not to put the bristles back on top because it may leave a little ridge. I'm just hitting this in case a little sagged over the side. Yeah, you can see, especially this end grain here, that stuff soaked it up already. All right, folks, that is about it. Here, I'll give you a quick shot of this guy here because this is really cool. Look at this bad boy. Beautiful. Love that stuff. All right, let's see what else we got here, folks. Olga, what is best to protect plywood, please, that's painted with acrylics on one side? So if it's exterior, I would prime it with probably an oil-based primer or at least a stain blocking primer. Some of those plywoods have waxes, tannins, other things in them, manufacturing chemicals that you want to block. Some of them even have, the factory markings, the imprints, the black or green writing on them. That stuff will actually bleed through paint. So you want to stain block that stuff. But let me know what the specific use is, Olga. And then I would use the highest grade exterior acrylic, 100% acrylic paint that you could possibly get. Shane Walker, how's it going, man? Good morning. I ran into a deck project that has sap continuing to excrete from the wood. It was painted 2 years ago, later removed and then sealed with Thompson's water seal. Do you know a way to seal this and prevent sap from coming through? No, that is not something that we can control. If that wood um, was wet or young when it was installed, there is nothing we can do. You can just let that wood do what it's going to do, and it'll continue to come out. Perfect example of what we're doing today, which is we're not going to replace an entire deck probably because of a few things of sap. But what you can do is every fall, get out there, scrape the sap off, maybe use acetone lacquer thinner to sort of like thin it down a little bit, possibly even turpentine. Turpentine is actually made from sap of trees like that. You might be able to thin it and de-wax it a little bit and then touch it up with either paint or water sealer after that. But that'd be a great fall sort of fix-up project. Jim Davis, where do you get your prep pouches? Let's see. Those would be Amazon. If you email me, nick@nickslavik.com, I can send you the link. David Cole, I love to break out my Graco HVLP for those projects. Love the finish the product gives, and Purdy is amazing. Love all the Purdy products. Thanks, man. I agree. Gustavo, we use the ox hair brushes for varnishes. Ooh, fancy pants. So I have a couple of the ox hair brushes, Badger as well. And those things are super beautiful, super fine. I use them only for select interior projects, a lot of time even just for furniture projects because they're so beautiful and so delicate. And I always take my time and wash those suckers out because those are definitely not your one-time use sort of things like that. But yeah, Gustavo, if you know, you know. If you've never tried an ox hair or like a badger hair brush like that, you got to give them a try. They're just awesome. So, Hammer, morning from Oregon. How are you? All right, Shane, no problem, man. Happy to help. Mike, how's it going? Good morning, Mike Danahy. Rue, I like the ox hair with oil interior. Absolutely, man. Yeah, those things are a treat to use. So, well, everybody, that's gonna be it for me today. Um, I really appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you following along. I appreciate you putting up with my antics of broadcasting live from islands. Um, I would love to see you guys at one of my master's classes. It's going to be a great time. Also, the PCA Expo is back, folks. It's going to be early 2022. I would urge you not to miss it. The PCA Residential Forum was back this year in San Antonio last week. I sent estimator Andy. We're still downloading notes from him there. It was an awesome time. Sadly, I had my family vacation booked months and months before the residential forum was booked. Very sad I couldn't be there, but happy to be with my family. I will not miss it again next year. Do not miss the expo, folks. Please, please, please do yourself a favor and be there. It's going to be tons and tons of some of the finest, brightest minds in our industry all in one place sharing best practices. So if you want more information on that, contact the PCA. There is a link in the show notes of this very show. And I want to thank the PCA for being strong underwriters of what I do. And I wouldn't get behind them if we didn't share the same core values and the same ideals and the same mission, which is to professionalize this industry. Because we all know that we all do better when we all do better. So, also, I love a good challenge. I love a good task. Thank you, Purdy and Minwax, for always keeping me on my toes, giving me fun challenges like this. So I do appreciate it. You guys have been great supporters of all we do, and all the viewers of this show. Thank you as well. So, all right, folks, have a good weekend.